The morning mist clings to Saipan's coral beaches like a funeral shroud. June 15th, 1944. Lieutenant Hiroshi Nakamura crouches in his concrete bunker, 30 feet above the killing zone he's spent months preparing. His machine gun nest commands perfect fields of fire across the approaches. 3 years of Pacific War have taught him the rhythm of American amphibious assaults. Landing craft grinding against coral reefs, soldiers wading through chest-deep water, dying in the shallows under devastating fire from positions exactly like his. But something moves wrong in the morning haze beyond the reef. Shapes too large, too angular, advancing with mechanical precision through water that should stop any vehicle dead. Nakamura adjusts his field glasses, and his stomach tightens into a knot of disbelief. These are not landing craft. These are tanks, massive, boxy machines with tracks churning through 3 feet of Pacific water like some impossible fever dream. Their 75 millimeter cannons already traversing toward his position with predatory intent. Impossible, he whispers in Japanese, his voice barely audible over the thunder of distant battleships. Tanks cannot swim. Yet there they are, dozens of mechanical beasts emerging from the sea itself, their engines growling like primordial creatures crawling from the deep. Behind them, conventional landing craft discharge thousands more Marines, but now they advance behind a moving wall of armor that Japanese planners never anticipated, never imagined, never prepared for. The first blast from an amphibious tank's cannon tears a chunk from Nakamura's bunker, showering him with concrete dust and the sudden, terrifying realization that everything he's been told about holding Americans at the waterline has just become obsolete. How did machines that shouldn't exist rewrite the rules of warfare in a single morning? And why did the peaceful inventor who created them never imagine they would bring an empire to its knees? You have to understand. This revolution began not in some top-secret military laboratory, but in the humid workshops of Lakeland, Florida, where a millionaire engineer named Donald Roebling was trying to save lives, not take them. September 1935. The most devastating hurricane in Florida's history has just torn through the Keys, leaving over 400 people dead and thousands more stranded in a hellscape of flooded roads, debris fields, and shallow water that conventional rescue vehicles simply cannot traverse. Donald Roebling, heir to a bridge-building empire, stares at newspaper photos of the destruction and sees a problem that genius can solve. His hands, already stained with grease and metal filings, sketch the first designs for what he calls simply the Alligator, a tracked vehicle that can swim like a boat but climb like a tank. In his private workshop, surrounded by prototype engines and aluminum hull sections, Roebling has no idea he's designing the machine that will transform warfare itself. Meanwhile, 6,000 miles across the Pacific, Imperial Japanese strategists are perfecting what they believe to be the ultimate island defense doctrine. The ocean itself will protect Japan's expanding empire. Enemy troops must come ashore in vulnerable boats, wade through deadly surf, establish footholds while exposed to devastating fire from prepared positions carved into coral and volcanic rock. Admiral Keiji Shibazaki embodies this confidence when he's posted to defend Tarawa Atoll in 1943. A veteran naval officer with decades of experience, he surveys the coral barriers extending hundreds of yards from shore and makes a boast that will echo through history. It would take 1 million men 100 years to conquer Tarawa. His defensive preparations are masterful, interlocking fields of fire, concrete bunkers that can withstand battleship bombardment, every approach covered by machine guns and artillery. But like every Japanese commander in the Pacific, Shibazaki's strategy depends on one unshakable assumption. American forces will follow predictable patterns, arriving in conventional landing craft that must discharge their human cargo in shallow water. But in Florida, Roebling's workshop has become something far more significant than a rich man's hobby. Life magazine features his amphibious Alligator in 1940, showing photographs of the strange tracked machine crawling through swampland with rescue workers aboard. Marine Corps officers at Quantico study these images with growing excitement. They're not thinking about hurricane rescue. They're envisioning beaches bristling with Japanese guns. By 1942, Roebling's peaceful invention has been militarized into the LVT, Landing Vehicle Tracked. American factories in Detroit and Cleveland retool assembly lines to produce not dozens, but thousands of these amphibious machines. Each iteration grows larger, more heavily armored, more powerful. The original civilian rescue vehicle that could barely carry a dozen people evolves into the LVT-4, a 40-ton monster capable of transporting 24 fully equipped Marines from ship to shore, then continuing inland with the firepower of a medium tank. The engineering challenges are staggering. How do you waterproof a vehicle that must operate in salt water, then immediately function on land? How do you design tracks that provide both marine propulsion and terrestrial traction? How do you mount weapons that can engage targets both above and below the waterline? But the real breakthrough isn't technological, it's tactical. Previous amphibious assaults had followed predictable patterns: naval bombardment, waves of landing craft, the slow, dangerous process of getting heavy equipment ashore. The LVT eliminates the most vulnerable phase entirely, that deadly transition from sea to land where so many Americans had died. Colonel David Shoup, hero of Tarawa, grasps the implications immediately. Standing before maps of coral atolls at Marine headquarters in Hawaii, he makes a prediction that will prove prophetic. Without LVTs, there is no operation. With them, we can put armor on any beach in the Pacific. Japanese intelligence services detect unusual activity around American LVT formations, but their analysts cannot grasp the tactical implications. They have no comparable vehicles in their own inventory. They cannot imagine how tracked vehicles might function in saltwater. This intelligence gap will prove fatal. Because 700 miles away, Admiral Shibazaki continues refining his defensive plans, confident that coral reefs and ocean barriers will channel American forces into predetermined killing zones. He has no idea that those barriers are about to become highways. 5:45 a.m., June 15, 1944. The USS Tennessee's 16-inch guns speak first, their thunder rolling across 30 miles of Pacific water before erupting in towering geysers of coral and concrete. Within minutes, 7 battleships, 11 cruisers, and 26 destroyers join the barrage, transforming the pre-dawn darkness into a hellscape of flame and flying debris. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito feels each impact like a physical blow from his command bunker deep beneath Mount Tapochau. But his engineers have anticipated this overwhelming firepower. The truly critical positions aren't visible at all. They lie hidden in natural caves, enlarged and reinforced with concrete, connected by tunnels that allow defenders to move unseen between positions. 15 miles offshore, Sergeant Jimmy Martinez runs final equipment checks on his LVT-4, briefing his crew on their mission: carry 24 Marines of the 2nd Division directly to Red Beach 1, then provide fire support as they advance inland. Unlike Higgins boat operators who discharge troops at the reef edge and immediately withdraw, Martinez will take his Alligator all the way to shore and beyond. "Remember," Martinez tells his crew, his voice steady despite the thunder of naval bombardment, "we're not just a taxi service anymore. We're the first tanks on the beach, and every Marine behind us is counting on our gun to keep them alive." At 7 a.m., the guns fall silent. In the sudden quiet, broken only by waves against coral, American landing craft begin their final approach. But unlike every previous amphibious assault in Pacific War history, the first vehicles to hit Saipan's beaches won't be carrying helpless troops wading through surf. 8:00 a.m. Through the acrid smoke of naval bombardment, the first shapes emerge from morning haze like mechanical sea monsters breaking the surface of an alien world. Lieutenant Nakamura, still crouched in his cliffside bunker, watches in growing disbelief as tracked vehicles churn directly through the coral reef that was supposed to stop American armor dead in its tracks. Martinez's LVT-4 plows through 3 feet of water at nearly 8 mph. Its specially designed tracks providing propulsion while its 75mm cannon swivels toward Japanese positions. Behind Martinez, a line of amphibious tanks stretches back to the horizon, each carrying its deadly cargo of Marines and heavy weapons directly from ship to shore without pause or vulnerability. "Impossible," Nakamura whispers, his fingers trembling as he adjusts his machine gun's elevation. "Tanks cannot swim." But there they are, 40 tons of American engineering prowess proving that the ocean is no longer Japan's ally. As Martinez's LVT approaches the beach, his gunner identifies a concrete pillbox that survived naval bombardment and is already traversing a machine gun toward the landing zone. The 75mm cannon fires. The pillbox disappears in a cloud of concrete dust and twisted steel. Across the 4-mile landing front, similar scenes play out as nearly 700 LVTs deliver their human cargo directly onto Saipan's beaches. Unlike predictable waves of Higgins boats that Japanese defenders had learned to target, these armored vehicles arrive in a continuous stream, each capable of independent action while providing mutual support to neighbors. Private First Class Robert Chen, riding in Martinez's LVT, feels the tracks bite into coral sand as they make the transition from sea to land. "Holy cow, Sarge," he shouts over engine noise. "We just drove a tank out of the ocean." For 3 years, American amphibious doctrine had accepted massive casualties as the inevitable price of establishing beachheads against fortified positions. At Tarawa, nearly 1,000 Marines died in 76 hours, most while wading through shallows under devastating fire from positions exactly like those now facing them on Saipan. But the LVTs have eliminated the most vulnerable phase of assault. Japanese defensive fire, carefully pre-registered on the waterline where previous American assaults had been most exposed, now strikes empty water. The real targets are already inland, their armor shrugging off small arms fire, while their cannons systematically reduce positions that took months to construct. Colonel Takeshi Yamamoto, commanding the 136th Infantry Regiment responsible for defending southern beaches, frantically radios his superiors. "Enemy tanks are coming directly from the sea. Repeat, enemy tanks are coming from the sea. Our beach obstacles are useless. They are driving over the coral reef." But even as Yamamoto speaks, he realizes this is more than tactical surprise. American engineers have fundamentally solved the central problem of amphibious warfare: how to deliver heavy weapons and armor to hostile shores quickly enough to exploit the shock of initial assault. Within 90 minutes of first landing, over 8,000 American troops are ashore with full armor support, advancing against positions designed to defeat an entirely different kind of attack. Japan's 3-year investment in coral reef defenses has become worthless in less than 2 hours. By 10 a.m., Lieutenant General Saito realizes that every assumption underlying his defensive strategy has been wrong. Radio reports paint a nightmare scenario: American armor already 2 miles inland, Japanese beach defenses collapsing faster than reserves can respond, Americans landing supplies and reinforcements at rates that make previous assaults look like reconnaissance probes. "Launch the counterattack now," Saito orders Colonel Yamamoto. "Drive them back into the sea before they consolidate." What follows is one of the largest tank battles in Pacific warfare history, though the odds are catastrophically lopsided. Japan's 9th Tank Regiment, equipped with lightweight Type 95 Hago tanks designed for infantry support in China, charges across Saipan's sugarcane fields with desperate courage and obsolete equipment. Martinez watches through his periscope as the first Japanese tanks emerge from coconut palms. Target's 11 o'clock, his gunner calls. Range 800 yards. The 75mm cannon fires. The lead Hago simply disintegrates, its thin armor no match for weapons designed to knock out German Panthers in Normandy. In less than 20 minutes, 24 Japanese tanks become burning scrap metal scattered across cane fields. The age of amphibious tank warfare has arrived, and the Japanese Empire is learning what that means. Lieutenant Hiroshi Nakamura survived the Battle of Saipan, one of fewer than 1,000 Japanese defenders to live through what became a 3-week slaughter. In his post-war memoirs, published in 1970, he wrote words that capture the psychological earthquake of that morning. "We prepared for the enemy we knew, but America brought us a war we could never have imagined. They turned our greatest natural advantage, the ocean itself, into their highway to victory." The numbers tell the story of transformation that goes far beyond individual battles. Before Saipan, American forces required an average of 2 weeks to establish secure beachheads on defended islands. After Saipan, that timeline collapsed to days or even hours. The LVTs had eliminated the fundamental vulnerability that had constrained American offensive operations since Pearl Harbor. But the real revolution wasn't just tactical, it was strategic. For the first time since the war began, American forces had captured territory that brought Japanese cities within range of sustained bombing. B-29. Superfortresses, already being assembled on rapidly constructed airfields, would soon carry the war directly to Japan's industrial heartland. Donald Roebling, the peaceful inventor whose hurricane rescue vehicle had started this chain reaction, spent the rest of his life grappling with the unintended consequences of innovation. In a 1954 interview, he reflected, "I designed the Alligator to save lives in Florida swamps. I never imagined it would help end a war on the other side of the world." Sergeant Martinez returned to Texas after the war, keeping a photograph of his LVT-4 on his workshop wall for the rest of his life. "People ask me what won the war," he would tell his grandchildren, "and I tell them it wasn't any one thing. But I'll say this, the day we learned to drive tanks out of the ocean was the day Japan lost the Pacific." The strategic implications extended far beyond World War II. Modern amphibious assault vehicles trace their lineage directly back to those first LVTs that emerged from Saipan's surf. From today's Marine Corps assault amphibious vehicles to advanced hovercraft and tilt-rotor aircraft, the principle remains the same. Eliminate the vulnerable transition between sea and land that had constrained military operations for centuries. Today, the coral reefs around Saipan still bear scars from that morning in June 1944, when American amphibious tanks first demonstrated that the age of island fortress warfare was over. But the real monument to their achievement lies not in physical evidence of battle, but in the strategic reality they created, the transformation of the world's largest ocean from Japan's protective moat into America's highway to victory. It was here, on these shores, that an empire realized the war was already lost the moment American armor crawled directly out of the sea. Want to discover more untold stories of technological breakthroughs that changed history? Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because the most decisive battles are often won by innovations nobody saw coming.